This Pentax 6x7 is the oldest brother in the Pentax 6.7 line. It was followed by the Pentax 6.7 and the Pentax 6.7 II, both of them which have additional features that this one does not have. But I really like this camera, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit later on in this video about why I like and some of a little bit of dislikes that I have for this camera. But before we do that, I want to talk to you a little bit about the look and feel of this camera. The first thing you'll notice of this camera is that it's heavy. It is heavy. This is not the weight or feel of your standard medium format cameras. Most medium format TLR style cameras are actually much lighter than this. And I also have the RZ67 over here, and they're both comparable in terms of weight and holding them in your hand. This version that I have right here is the prism finder. This one does not have a light meter inside of it, but this camera is customizable, and you can definitely get a metered prism finder for this camera, as well as a waist level viewfinder, which could be actually interesting when you're shooting out in the real world. This version is the mirror lockup version. If you hit this button right here on the side, it locks up the mirror, and I have found myself hitting this mirror lockup button a lot when I'm out there in the world because I have really long fingers. So when I hold it with the grip right here, I don't know if you can see it in this video, but sometimes it could just like hit that button right there, and once you hit that button you cannot see through the viewfinder, so you're shooting basically blind when you're taking these pictures. You have to estimate the value of where you stand when you're shooting out there in the world if you mistakenly hit that button. And for me personally, I do not like the mirror lockup function. It's not something that I found myself using that often. In fact, it's been more of a hindrance and wasting shots than actually being that helpful. You can also get multiple grips for this camera. The grip that I have on this version out here is the right hand grip. There's also a left hand grip that you do see a lot of YouTubers, a lot of different people who have this camera that they have, but for me, for the functions that I use this camera for, the right hand grip is more than enough for me. I also have this neck strap. It's not really a neck strap because if you put this on your neck, it could weigh you down. I am a big guy, so it doesn't necessarily weigh me down, but what I do when I'm using this camera is that I put it on my shoulder. I have it right here. When I see a shot, I pick it up and put it to my eye, and then I shoot. I use this camera mostly for street photography, believe it or not. I always have this camera with me because I only shoot medium formats. I have two medium format cameras. I have this Pentax 6x7 as well as the RZ67, and both of these cameras are really heavy. But with the modifications I've done to this camera with the right hand grip, with the neck strap / shoulder strap, it actually comes in handy. And with the SLR style camera that this is, it just makes this camera really fun to use. Loading film on this camera is actually pretty smooth once you get a hang of it. It's pretty much like loading up a 35mm film camera, except there's no rewind function. I'm going to show you how I go about loading this camera right now, so take a moment and learn how to load this camera. This camera comes with a wide range of lens options. You have the 105, which a lot of people shoot with. You have a 45, you have a 35, you have a 90, you have the 135, you have the 165, and there's a couple more out there that I don't necessarily know about right now. But if you're getting into this ecosystem, there's definitely a lot of options for lenses, and it's something that I really like about shooting with the Pentax 6.7. If you want to know more about this camera, more about the specs, more about the looks and feel, if you want to see some more photos of this Pentax camera, make sure you hit my blog up. It's filmstockreal.com. I'm going to link it in the description down below, so check that out. As I said at the beginning of this video, I've put a lot of rolls through this camera. Here are some of my favorite pictures I've been able to take on this camera, and let me know what you think about them in the comment section down below. these are just some of the many photos that I've shot with this camera. I actually print a lot of my photos in 4x6 as well as 16x20 just to hang up around the house. And I actually made a photo book with the last series that I did with the CNE, which I shot some of the photos on this Pentax 6x7. If this is something you're interested in, let me know in the comment section down below, and you can definitely send you some prints. Let's start off with what I like about this camera. The first thing that I really like about this camera is that it takes 10 images. I know. Some people might be turned off by the fact that it does take 10 images, but for me, I really like that. It allows me to go out into the world and be very purposeful about every single shot that I take with this camera. When I first started shooting medium formats, I started with the TLR style cameras, and those cameras shoot 12 images, right? And then I graduated to shooting medium format, shooting 645, and that you get 15, sometimes 16 images depending on the camera that you use. And then I went up to the 6x7 medium format, and that was like crazy to me that you only got 10 shots. But the more I shoot with this camera, the more I'm out there in the world, the less I'm actually just like taking random shots, right? If you're shooting 35mm, you have 36 shots. You're just out there shooting whatever. If you're shooting on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, digital camera, you're just out there basically spraying and praying and making sure that you get as much as possible. Or if you're out there with your phone, you're just taking shots. But if you're using this 6x7 camera, you only get 10 shots. You're very disciplined with your composition. You're very disciplined in what you decide to shoot, and it allows you to take, in my opinion, better photos. The second thing I like about this camera is that it's an SLR style camera, which means you can bring it up to your eye like this and take your photo. A lot of medium format cameras are actually like waist level viewfinder style cameras, or they're really chunky or really awkward to hold up to your eye and shoot with. And this one is a little different because it allows you to feel like you're using a regular style camera. And one of the main things that I liked when I first started using this is that I could walk around with it, put it to my eye and shoot. If I'm driving in the car, I don't really have to come out. If I have my composition all set, I can just bring it up to my eye and shoot. It allows me to shoot in a lot of different situations that I wouldn't normally be able to shoot because it's an SLR style camera. Another thing that I really like about this camera that's not necessarily something that a lot of people are going to agree with is that the shutter sound is amazing. If you've ever heard the shutter on this camera, it like the haptic feedback that you get when you shoot with this camera, it just makes you feel good whenever you shoot. I don't even know how to explain it. The more I shoot with this camera, the more I fall in love with that sound. Every time I'm out there just shooting, it just makes me want to shoot more, because it's like when you feel that slap go up, I'm gonna put the sound effect in for you so you understand what I'm talking about. But this is actually one of the best sounding cameras out there. And if you've shot with the 6x7, if you love film photography, you cannot tell me that the sound of this shutter, the sound of the glass slapping up and down, doesn't make you feel good. And the last thing that I really like about this camera is that it's modular. It's definitely not as modular as the RZ67, but you can change the prism finder, you can change the lenses, you can change the back, you can modify it in different ways to give you the look and feel that you want with the camera. And there are a lot of medium format cameras that are not really modular, and this is definitely in between being really modular and not modular at all, in the fact that there's only a limited amount of parts that you can change on this camera versus the RZ67, where you can change the backs, you can change the lenses, you can change the viewfinder, and you can just change a whole lot with that camera. A couple of things that I don't like about this camera. The first is that it only shoots 10 images. Now, I know I said that I like that it only shoots 10 images because it allows me to be more cautious and be more intentional with every shot that I take. But sometimes when you're out there shooting, the light is right, the mood is right, the music feels nice in my ears, I take this camera out, I start shooting, bam, 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 bam. Next thing I know, film is done. And film is expensive. It takes time to get into the camera, change the film, put in another roll of film. It takes a little bit of time. I have gotten fast with changing the film on this camera, and it doesn't take me that much time, but it just takes you out of the groove of shooting. And it's just something that you should know if you're going to get into this ecosystem, that while it does allow you to be more intentional, it sometimes takes you out of your groove because it only has 10 shots in it. The second thing is that it's heavy. It's significantly heavier than any other camera that I've shot with. If you're coming from 35, if you're coming from 645, even if you're coming from other medium format style cameras, this one is significantly heavier. It's not as heavy as the RZ67, which is even much heavier, but this one, just depending on even what you have on it, if you have the grip on it, left hand grip or right hand grip, depending on the lens you have on it, depending on the type of viewfinder you have on it, it could be even heavier. And for me, I am a pretty beefy guy. I like to think of myself as someone that like works out, but when I have this camera out for an hour or two, or if I have it on my shoulder or my neck, I start to feel it after a couple hours, and it's definitely something that you need to know if you're going to be taking this camera out with you. I found myself sometimes just putting it in my backpack and just walking around, and even second guessing myself, thinking if I want to take it out, if I want to have it on my neck, and it's a lot. Right, this is something that you definitely have to know if you're going to be getting into this camera, depending on what you want to use it for. Another thing you need to know is that it's a bit expensive to get started with it. The body on this camera cost me about $850 Canadian, and the two lenses that I have cost me about $350 Canadian, as well as this 75mm cost wasn't that much actually. It was like $150 Canadian. But if you want to get the best lens for this camera, which a lot of people say is the 105mm lens, that's going to cost you anywhere between $1,000 and $1,500 Canadian. And for me, I don't have that much money to spend on a lens, especially for the type of photography that I shoot. I shoot a lot of street style photography, a lot of I guess you call it urban architecture, street style photography. I like wide. I don't like tight. I like really wide. I don't shoot a lot of portraits, so it's not really for me. But if you're getting this camera to shoot with the 105mm lens for portraits, you're gonna have to spend a huge chunk of money to get started on this. And film's expensive. Medium format film, you only get 10 shots, 12 shots, 15 shots. Film's expensive, so it's definitely something worth noting if you're going to be getting into this ecosystem. Another thing that I don't like, but it's not necessarily a drawback, is the fact that it uses a battery. I like fully mechanical cameras that don't necessarily need a battery, but this one needs a battery for the mirror to come up and down. I have found myself in situations out there when I'm shooting and I take a shot and it just sticks. And once it sticks, you know, oh damn it, the battery is done. And if you don't have a spare battery on you, even if you do have a battery on you, you've just wasted that one shot because the camera battery is dead, right? So one thing to note if you're going to buy this camera, if you're going to be shooting with this camera, is that you always have to have a spare battery on you, because you don't know when this battery is going to die on you. There is a button right here for battery check that allows you to check the level of the battery, but mine doesn't work, so I never know when the battery is going to die on me. Last thoughts about this camera is that it's not a beginner camera. It's not a beginner medium format camera. This is something you're looking to upgrade from a 35mm to this camera. I definitely suggest getting a TLR camera first before jumping off to the 6x7 formats, or even a 645 camera first before coming up to this one, because number one, it is expensive. While it is really nice to shoot with, it is expensive. It does take a lot of getting used to, and it isn't something that I would recommend for someone who hasn't shot medium format before. Now, if you've shot medium format before, 645, and you're looking for something to upgrade to, I definitely suggest getting this 6x7 camera, and I'd love to hear your opinions. If you've shot with this camera, if you think this camera is really good, if you think it's not, let me know in the comment section down below. I love to get into it with people. I love to talk cameras with people. I love to talk medium format with people. I especially love this Pentax 6x7, so I would love to hear your opinions on it. Let me know in the comment section down below. That brings us to the end of this video. If this video has brought you any value at all, please let me know by hitting that like button and also subscribing to my channel, as this goes a long way to making sure I produce more content like this. Until next time, make sure you check out my blog. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, as I post a lot of my photos on there. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.